Alas, suffering is born. We failed the child.
I've abandoned my child!
We have lost. I have nothing more to give.
If you're a broke boy, just say so.
So we begin again.
Released in 2020, Othercide is from a French studio, two of them. One of them called Too Awesome with the numeric 2, and the other one is Lightbulb Crew, and this was distributed by Focus Entertainment. A 9 out of 10 score on Steam. Don't worry about the IGN. Why have you put a turn-based video game on your channel when Baldur's Gate 3 is out there and is a local co-op? You're an absolute disgrace. I don't have Pokemon cookie money at the moment. I did back in 2020. This was purchased to go on a top PS4 and PlayStation 5 turn-based video. I shall link it, and I'm very into Warhammer 40k turn-based games. There's a surprising amount of really good ones out there. I will also link all of those. Space Hulk is awesome.
They want the organs.
Can you stop mucking about, please, and tell us exactly what we're looking at here? Othercide is a roguelike, turn-based horror game. It's fantastic with its aesthetic. I love these charcoals and these deep scarlets. And you play as a group of sisters that can permanently rebirth and recycle themselves. This is just like Darkest Dungeons, consistent feed of new characters to develop. Obviously some will die. This game gives you the ability to rebirth certain characters that are high rank. We'll get into that in a second. But I want to point out that it's got that amazing XCOM ownership with each of your characters. You level them up individually, you hand pick their traits and their memories and turn them into a badass.
Careful. You wouldn't want my scalpel to slip into innocent flesh.
As all XCOM fans know, what comes with that character ownership is also a loss when that character dies. So it's well interesting having that tension when you've got a high rank player on pitch and they're getting close to not making it out of there. I will also say the game's user interface is really slick, really easy to use, very intuitive. I play a lot of Chaos Gate, which has got quite a convoluted system on a lot of the turn-based options you've got, and looking exactly how much AP a character's got left. It can be a bit of a nightmare, but with this it's really mapped out to you, and knowing exactly where someone can go, whether moving to a certain square is going to be able to execute a piece of punishment. Sometimes turn-based games have the tendency to leave you marooned because you didn't realize that the attack cost more than you've got left. You'll be noticing that I've got different classes. You do have range, you've got a shield bearer, and you've got an out and out slasher, and there's a fourth class that I'm yet to open. That's a big pull for me. I cannot wait to have that choice.
Flawless.
Upon rebirthing the sisters, you can choose exactly what sort of class you want. So the emphasis is on you to keep things varied. You're going to need at least one of each, and depending on what mission you've got coming up, you might want to mix those ratios around. Assembling a decent hand-picked sort of self-ranked team I think is a really cool, strong element for good turn-based games. Most of the Warhammer 40Ks do it, and investing and sort of pumping cool things into your star player and then seeing that come to fruition on the battlefield is so satisfying, and this game very much delivers on that front. Let's talk about its horror angle, because this is super interesting. Some of you may remember me talking about Bayonetta over on the Top Kick-Ass Women video, and that features Iron Maidens, which are real torture instruments that were used against witches and women way back in the, I just googled that, 18th century. Jesus, I thought it would be a lot further back. That makes it even more terrifying.
I am trying to focus on the important core aspects here.
So back to that point, the enemies are like these surgeons who are plague doctors also, and they have these crazy weapons, really spooky voices, and everything is about this sacrificial sort of journey that you're taking your sisters on, and giving up a lot of already won awards to this sort of evil entity. There's a very strong supernatural vibe here, and the game has a very clear idea of its lore and message. It's like set in stone, this world. It's almost like a parallel universe. It's very cool. You get straight into it. The soundtrack and everything just sweeps you up and you start really caring about all your characters and getting to the boss fights, which is something I want to talk about. It's got an extremely interesting roguelike model. I know you hear me use that terminology a lot, and I am aware that the original roguelike was actually a dungeon crawler. This is more of a focus on the rewards that you receive after death and then getting that buff on the replay. It's a super important aspect to this game. Normally, traditionally, when I've played turn-based tactics games, it's a very single player campaign focused piece of structure and it's end to end. Are you with me? And if you don't make it, you just restart the game again. This is all about failure, and your first run is going to be really difficult. You probably die on the boss immediately, but more importantly, you get these credits to then spend on this huge list, Risk of Rain long, of buffs and perks and different sort of additions that you can add to the sisters before starting a new game again. That's the layer that's going to get you further. You do also have these traits and memories that get put onto individual characters, and once finishing a mission, the joyous part is then applying all those points, ranking everything up, and then going back out. And that brings me over to his extremely advanced time progression system, which is actually voluntary. You do all the missions in the day that you're given. Once you've exhausted that, you progress forward. This is great because it gives you new missions and you get a certain amount of revive, but it also takes you one step closer to that inevitable boss fight. So it's your job to kind of get ranked up, get everything sorted out, and then be it on your choice, you go to that final stage, which is the boss. I really enjoy that preparation aspect. This is the list of the remembrances, and it's huge. Like, I was thinking, whoa, what on earth is this game going to be like when I've got it sort of mid to end? You get a budget to actually toggle stuff on and off, so they're not always going to be available to you the whole time. You have to sort of cherry pick what's going to suit you for that particular playthrough.
I revel in her strength.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
It's a really great system because it means that game over is not meaning the end, and then doing the runs again is not too laborious because you've got all these new moves to sort of access and get your head round. You can start feeding in new sisters, getting those ranked up. Darkest Dungeon has it brilliantly, and this is a very close second place for that sort of structure. I'm trying to think back to when I first saw individual unit ownership and ranking in a video game, and I think it's probably cannon fodder on the Amiga. If your guy's got loads of kills, one of them would get a little echelon above his head. Then I saw it again in Dune, the RTS, the early Dune games, and you still see it in certain RTS games around at the moment. Dawn of War 2 in particular, which I am craving to do a review of. Can you guys tell me if you want to see that?
I am Gabriel Angelos.
Shatter them.
Can you explain how these moves work? Because I keep seeing loads of cutscenes, red everywhere. The range character is surprisingly familiar, giving you loads of cool, cheap AP moves like one-off shots, or even movement is a lot easier. But more importantly, they have an overwatch, which costs you a bit of health, which I thought was an added angle.
Will the poor one's suffering never end?
But it's the shield bearer and the blade master where things get super interesting. Some moves are huge, will cover multiple squares but take more than one turn to execute, and moving around and bashing or knocking back characters out of their grid slot or disrupting the way they're facing is also a really cool angle. Mission types are not as jostled as you would think. Some of them are escort missions, which are pretty exciting, and others are just out and out extermination. The extraction section, this is a bit where one of my uber important members gets butchered just millimeters from the exit of a level. So it's really important that you pull everyone out alive. That is definitely a huge XCOM nod.
A monument to terror. They destroyed a child and called it mercy.
This is also available on loads of platforms, including the Switch. Now, that's something I want to get to, and that's its graphical fidelity. Although I really enjoy this palette, it's almost noir-like. The camera is locked. I would have loved a 360 pan to look at everything and get a better idea of how the battlefield works. Sometimes things can be stood behind these weird trees, and that points me back to the Switch and turn-based games in general. This is not going to chug any system, and it's going to run on most platforms. So that's definitely a bonus, but I'd like to to have seen a little bit more detail, or even a zoom. A zoom would have been awesome. You have that on Mechanicus, which is a game I'll put in the description. I hold this up against that as a good equivalent turn-based modern title. Top tip for that first boss, you need to take care of all the additional caretakers before you can submit a single numeric piece of damage. I found that out the hard way. Would I recommend this game to everybody? Well, no. You have to be into your roguelikes and turn-based, and I think quite a lot of my recent subscribers certainly are. I got a lot of good feedback from the Scourgebringer video, and of course everyone likes punishing themselves with Returnal. I like the idea particularly of turn-based on Switch, because you can quite literally put it down and pick it back up again. You can get stuff done whilst doing a playthrough of an evening. You don't have to be 200% locked onto the screen, and it can also sit there for a couple of days and you can just pick it up and get straight back on with things. What am I going to do about Baldur's Gate 3? Well, I may even send Larian Studios a message on Twitter or X explaining that I introduced Divinity Original Sin 1 to over 100 and something thousand people, and some PS5 review codes wouldn't go amiss. They may even be watching the video. I was, of course, CouchCoo. Please don't unsubscribe to me because I haven't reviewed Baldur's Gate 3 local co-op yet. I've just seen an update go past for Ark Ascended, which was performing very badly on split screen. Guess how big it is? It's 500 megabyte. I think you're going to need a bigger patch. I will, of course, be seeing you all down there. The next video should be A Plague's Tale Requiem or Inquisition. Fingers crossed we'll hear back from Larian Studios.